Good evening. Good evening. Let me try this. Oh, there it goes. Is that, yeah, there we go. Good evening. I'd like to call the October 7th, 2010 meeting of the West Sacramento Planning Commission to order. We start each meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. Tonight, we have an outgoing city planner. It's his last meeting. I'd like to ask Steve Riccola if he could please lead us in the pledge this evening.
Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Riccola. We also start the meeting with presentations by the public on matters on the agenda within the jurisdiction of the commission, but not on our agenda. So if you would like to speak either now or during any item, we do have slips to the left of the entrance door. We'd like to ask you to fill those out if you'd like to speak on any item. I don't have any items for this. The presentation's not on our agenda. So we'll move on to correspondence and staff communications from the city planner. Mr. Riccola.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman and members of the Planning Commission. I just wanted to report that at last night's City Council meeting, the City Council adopted unanimously the Green Building Ordinance. We are the third city in the state of California to adopt an ordinance that is in compliance with the new California Green Building Ordinance that will take effect in 30 days. So with that, that concludes my remarks, other than mentioning that on October 21st, our meeting has been canceled, and then I'll have some remarks at the end of the meeting, if I can. Okay?
Thank you, Mr. Riccola.
Thank you.
We'll move on to disclosure of ex parte communication. At this time, planning commissioners disclose if they've had any communications on agenda items outside of the public forum. Any commissioners? Thank you. That takes us to our consent agenda. We have 2 items on the agenda, including the minutes of the September 19th meeting and self-storage conditional use permit.
Madam Chairman, I have a question of our council. I have a conflict with item number 2 because my wife and I own property within 500 feet of that site. But it's my understanding if it's a consent item, I don't have to leave the room, just not participate.
Yes, you just need to disclose your conflict, and I'd suggest that you have a separate vote on that, but you don't have to do it that way. You can just do it as a consent.
Madam Chairman, if we could take one
Items
and
separately?
2 separately.
All right. So we have the consideration and approval of the minutes from September 19th, 2010. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Ledesma. Is there a second?
Second.
By Mr. Liebig. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, passes unanimously. We'll move on to item 2, pulled from the consent agenda, Jefferson Self-Storage Conditional Use Permit and Variance Time Extension. Is there a motion to approve that consent item?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Ledesma. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Blackburn. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
I abstain.
Thank you, Mr. Morazzini. We'll move on to our regular agenda, which is item number 3, Heritage Peak Charter School Resource Conditional Use Permit. Ms. White is our presenting staff member today.
Good evening, Madam Chairman and members of the Planning Commission. The Heritage Peak Charter School is proposing to operate a resource center at 840 Jefferson Boulevard. Heritage Peak is a nonprofit independent study school for grades K through 12, and it is accredited by the Western Association of Schools and Colleges to the year 2014. The Resource Center currently serves 134 students, and according to the applicant, approximately 85% of the students live in the city. The applicant anticipates that the Resource Center will serve approximately 194 students by the end of the 2011-2012 school year. This is not a school. It operates similar to a tutoring center or learning center like Sylvan Learning Center or Huntington Learning Center. It will provide a place for the students to meet with their teachers once a week. The students will receive additional instructional support, and it will also, at the Resource Center, they will also receive tutoring, testing, and technology support. They also plan to offer classes 2 to 3 times a week. Since all the findings can be made for the proposed use, staff is recommending that the Planning Commission conduct a public hearing, certify that the Planning Commission has determined that negative declaration is the appropriate level of environmental review in the CEQA, and finds that the negative declaration represents the independent judgment of the city, and approve the requested conditional use permit subject to the findings and conditions identified in the staff report. And that concludes my presentation, and the applicant is in the audience tonight as well.
Great, thank you, Ms. White. I neglected to review our process for hearings. Typically, we hear from the staff. I'll open the public hearing. We'll hear from the applicant, commission, and the public. I have no request to speak right now, except for the applicant. The commissioners may ask questions of the applicant. We'll then close the public hearing because we've gathered our information, and then we will we'll dialogue and deliberate. Thank you for helping me along tonight, Mr. Liebig. We'll deliberate and then come to our decision. So that's kind of the process. So with that, I'll open the public hearing and ask the applicant if there's a presentation that you would like to make or field questions. This is your opportunity.
Thank you. I'm the director of the school, Heritage Peak Charter School. My name is Paul Kiefer, and I'm from Sacramento, California. I think that Mr. Turner is the applicant on this as well,
Property owner.
property owner. So I guess I would be glad to field any questions that you may have about what we do or our impact. We think
Okay.
that we're going to be a positive impact for the community.
Thank you. Questions from the commissioner on the conditional use permit item?
I have
Mr. Liebig,
I have
yes.
a couple questions.
Yes.
I'm confused. Are you actually currently located at 830 and you're trying to move to 840, which is just across the parking lot?
Yes.
Okay. Was it required that you had a conditional use permit to be in 830?
Yes.
It's my
It
understanding.
was, okay. So you've been in that location for quite a while.
1 year, a little over a year.
I don't remember that. I must have been not paying attention that day or not here, so.
Well, it's, we're just trying to make sure it's all right and appropriate with you, and that's the reason why we're here now.
Any other
Okay.
questions?
I think that's
Okay.
my only applicant, or question for the applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Liebig. Other questions of the applicant? All right, I guess there are no more questions, so I will close the public hearing and we'll return it to the commission for deliberation.
Thank you very much.
So time for deliberation, comments?
Madam Chairman, I have a couple
Mr. Marzini?
questions of staff,
Okay,
and I think the staff report's very complete, Sandra, but I guess my only concern would be, because this is a school, or you're saying it's not a school, but it's tied to a charter school, and it's kind of an annex, so the folks that are going to be going there are students, and I guess it's not too different than like the mathnasium or something where
Right.
folks go, but I guess my concern would be regarding city liability, because if somebody was to get injured, because a lot of this is going to be like from kindergarten up to 12th grade, it's my understanding from the staff report. And so there'll be, some of the students will be driving their cars there because they're old enough to do so and licensed. And children coming and going, riding their bicycles for their tutoring sessions and all that sort of thing. And I guess my question would be addressed to Jeff. If there was, God forbid, an accident, some kid got hit on his bicycle going there, and the attorneys tried to prove the case that, well, this is really a school, and the school should have better protection for the kids and that sort of thing. Do we have any exposure? And before you answer, it's kind of weird because the former use of that was a library, and so kids would be going back and forth to the library and assisted too. But from a technical standpoint, are we exposing ourselves unnecessarily by not calling it a school? Because I looked at the zoning matrix for public, quasi-public, and community, it's clear that community education K through 12 is not even a conditioned use, although your staff report, Senator, says that there's some law that says that it doesn't have to be. I'd look for it here, but there's some
There's a Department of Education
Yeah.
code
stand-
that says it is not a school.
That said it's
It
not
is not a
supposed.
school. It is, functions like like you said, like a mathnasium, a Sylvan Learning Center, Huntington Learning Center. It's like a tutorial center. It's not a school where you have students will be there all day taking classes. It's a resource center,
I
not a
see.
school.
But, and Sandra, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is even if this was a school, this would be a conditionally permitted use?
Yes.
So, given that it, even as a school, it would be conditionally permitted, no, I don't see any potential for liability.
Okay, and that's my only concern. I think it's great to have a facility like this and educational choices for the kids in the community. So that was my only concern, having to do with liability. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morzini. Any other questions or actions to move forward? Mr. Liebig?
Thanks. I only had some questions. I just wanted to make sure that action wasn't taken. Question for Sandra. I actually didn't find, why does this project require a conditional use permit?
It's a use that is not listed in a zoning matrix. And in the zoning code, it says for uses not listed in the zoning matrix, it automatically requires a conditional use permit. And we do not have a land use or a land use that's close to or similar to a resource center. So that's why we determined that a conditional use permit is required.
Okay, thank you. Then I only have one comment for the commission. Given this is a learning center and it will have younger kids, I would like to make sure that there's secured bike parking spots. And by secured, all I mean is something to lock the bikes up to. I don't mean fencing or anything like that. I'm not sure if we need to add that as a condition, but given that there's approximately 24 students using the facility every day, I would think that at least 10 bike spots should be provided. Flexible on the number, but I think we should be requiring bike slips for this one.
So are you wanting to add that you recommending that to be as a
I'm
condition?
recommending that be added as a condition on the project. I'm open for discussion with the other commissioners. Seeing none, I would like to add a condition under project-specific conditions that if you can help me out with the wording, but the project include minimum.
Projects should provide secure parking facilities or
Correct, and
something
if
like that?
secured is fine, and-
Is there bicycle racks already there?
it was a bank before, I think, so I
Oh, it was all-
don't
and-
think so.
The library was there.
It was a library. It's for the bad kids.
Just give everybody the combination.
I should probably ask if the applicant is okay with this, but I
That
saw
was me.
head nods, so.
Yes, I'd say per the zoning ordinance.
Yeah, I would,
Mr.
Madam
yeah,
Chairman,
Mr.
I'd
Mitchell?
suggest that if that's the pleasure of the commission, you tie it to something like the zoning code standard for a school, or some other standard that, so it's not really an arbitrary number.
Oh, okay. I'd be fine with that.
Okay.
I don't know what that number is, so you might want,
I don't
if we
think
know,
I don't think there is
Can
a
we
number.
actually just
It
use
just says
the,
if you provide so many parking space, so many.
Maybe
bicycle
just list
facilities,
it
it reduces your
as staff would
required
seem,
parking stand.
deem ample would probably be enough. Let them work it out.
Supposed to say per the zoning.
or language as shall provide bike parking slips per
we're taking a
regular
look.
school?
They're taking a look right now.
Okay. Sorry, I know we all have a baseball game to get to.
So there's
For the
an
zoning
addition of,
And can- As long, I mean,
Mr.
all we're looking-
Ledesma?
Thank you. As long as it's just, what we're looking for is a number of racks, right? Just sort of kind of a standard, right? Is that what you're looking for, Mr. Lee?
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure that's clear. And no other,
Yes, per the zoning ordinance.
Okay.
any other comments or questions, concerns, or an action?
Is that, have you formed that in an action, as an action?
I
A
have
condition?
not formed that into a condition yet. I was still waiting
we-
for some guidance from staff on that one.
We have a condition drafted or crafted that says applicants shall provide secure bicycle facilities per the zoning ordinance.
Related to schools?
We don't
Or-
have a standard for schools. We
So-
just,
I just worry about tying it too much to the school standard. It's not a
It's
school.
not a school.
You're right, it's not a school, but without coming up with a hard number, there is no requirement for the zoning for this building, is there? The regular zoning code. So we would have a condition that would actually require no bike parking.
what the zoning code does say, it does says that if you want, this is for, if you want to reduce the number of parking spaces, it says at 8 bicycle parking spaces, equivalent to 1 parking space.
Right.
I don't know if you want to use the 8, but that's for if you want to reduce your on-site required parking. But
What
there's
the-
no standard for school, though.
What the zoning ordinance does have with regard to schools, it doesn't have a standard for public schools. It has a standard for vocational schools and business school. And basically, that standard is somewhere between 1 space per 250 feet and 1 space for 350 feet of surface, of office area. Now, I don't know what the size of the building is, but I'm sure the applicant or Brian knows. I don't think parking is going to be an issue there, and it doesn't look like their plans would anticipate a situation whereby there would actually be a high number of individuals parking there. But that's roughly the standard. Now, the ITTE does have standards for school. Our zoning ordinance, as Sandra has pointed out, aside for that issue, does not call out a specific standard for school. So we could relate it back to the ITTE definition, which we refer to, generally in that standard would be, somewhere on the order of about 1 space per 250 square feet of building. So those are the only standards that our zoning ordinance has with respect to schools, aside from what Sandra's mentioned about the bicycle.
Just to give a number, the square footage of the building divided by 350 yields 16 and a half spaces. That's actually more than I think that would be required for 24 students visiting a day.
Yes.
That's the
I'm not sure
current.
how to get to this without throwing out an arbitrary number.
I think referencing the zoning code with a specific bit about bicycle parking required, I think that at least gets us someplace, because I think that's guidance that we expect bicycle parking. And I know that I don't think we're going to be able to come up with the exact numbers, and then that leads to the arbitrary nature. So my suggestion is that we have language about bicycle parking referring back to zoning code, knowing that it's not exactly clear, it's conditioning that we're expecting bicycle parking. And I just feel like that, given that we can't recreate the zoning code tonight, at least we are noting that that's of interest or important to us. Mr. Mitchell, any other suggestions for us?
No, I think that makes sense. I think there's a general sense of what you're looking for. Secure bicycle parking, consistent with the zoning code.
Okay.
Otherwise, I think we hit the arbitrary nature issue, which is of a concern.
Right.
So I think,
I guess the only thing I could think of, not to keep dragging this out, is schools, and I don't want to tie it to schools, but schools do tie it to the number of students, don't they?
I mean,
Bicycle parking?
the
Is it
parking,
not tied to the number of students?
well, we don't have a standard for school. We don't have a parking standard for schools.
Wow, okay. I will go with Chair Sandin's recommendation then.
thank you. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Ledesma with the additional condition. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Mr. Liebig. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes unanimously. Thank you very much. That takes us to, do you need to read any,
Pardon me?
do you need to read if someone disputes the
Well,
hearing?
there's no
or
one here,
matter?
but-
Okay. I don't know. I've lost missing
Yes,
these
there
meetings
could be.
loses, it's my rhythm off.
Any member of the public could, yes, thank you. I should know this by heart.
It was not a trick question.
Any interested party may appeal the decision of the Planning Commission in to the City Council by filing a written appeal within 15 days of tonight's action and paying the applicable fee.
Thank you, Mr. Ricola.
You're welcome.
That brings us to informal discussion. As Mr. Ricola mentioned, our next meeting has been noticed as being canceled. And once again, I would like to thank Mr. Ricola for his service to the city over the number of years and for his leadership. Well, we wish you a happy retirement, and we
Thank
hope
you.
that we'll see you around the
Well, thank you.
town and the region.
Thank you.
Any other
Well,
comments
just some
from
closing comments, and my
Thank you.
apologies if this sounds a little bit preachy, but I was sitting back and trying to think of some things to say to kind of sum up some time here. And what I really thought about is the notion that, great plans and great cities just do not happen. They occur when there's a shared vision of what it takes. And you as planning commissioners, to me and individually, have shared your vision and served a major part in making this a better and greater place. And what I particularly enjoyed about working with you over the last several years is that you as commissioners debate openly, you honor different perspectives, you weigh evidence fairly, and you give reasons for the decisions you make. A city attorney could ask for nothing more, right? Right, Jeff? So we, as the city's paid staff, can also ask for nothing more and respect that. I had a former university extension professor and planning professor at UC Berkeley, who's now deceased, who I work for, who told me that, in England, that given the amount of work that planning commissioners do in California, they'd be knighted or receive a royal proclamation. But the amount of work that you do so tirelessly is appreciated by me, and I know all the other planning staff. I've enjoyed literally the hundreds of meetings over the last 20 years with you and your predecessors. So please continue to honor the differences that citizens of the city have, work hard as you always have done, and love and respect the ones that are dearest to you in your lives. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ricola. Any final comments, Mr. Ledesma?
I will, and just want to say thank you, Steve. It's been a pleasure having you as work with our planning commission for the last 9.5, 10 years I've been here. And I remember the very first time we met in your office over on South River. And I just really appreciated the guidance you've provided me early on in the planning commission and the service to our city. I think it's been a tough summer. A lot of good people have worked for the city. And I know your heart was always in the right place with our city and trying to guide it through a lot of tough decisions that I've been a part of. So thank you very much for your service.
Thank you.
I'd like to also thank you, Steve. It seems like you've moved around a lot. When we first started in the old World Trade Center building on Stone Boulevard and moved from there to Halyard and with the flood and everything, that there have been a lot of changes, not only where we've been meeting with the terrific city hall we have now, but you've always been responsive, and anytime I had any questions between meetings or a need to get with you, it seemed like your time was my time, and you'd call me back probably from home sometimes, to make sure that you were responsive, and I really appreciate that. And a lot of people probably don't recognize just how much effort the city staff members make, and you in particular, to see that the city's business gets taken care of, and I certainly appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Morzini.
I'd like to say something also.
Turn your microphone.
I'd like to thank you for, when I first came on the board, you were very helpful. I was a little overwhelmed, but you actually, I really didn't know what questions to ask in the beginning, and I really appreciate the time and effort you put in to actually proposing questions. Did you take a look at this? Did you take a look at this? And that was very helpful to me in initiating me on the following subsequent meetings and information, and I just really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you again, Mr. Ricola, for your service. And I'd like to call for a motion to adjourn in Steve's honor.
I will move to adjourn in honor of Steve Ricola.
Is there a second? Seconded by Mr. Morzini. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.